Good evening, everybody. We're going to be looking at the Devastation of Evoker. We're going to be looking at hero talents, the build talents, rotation, stat priority, and what we need to do exactly in whatever kind of situation. So first off, we're going to be looking at the talents. We'll go over the left side first. We're looking at grabbing Landslide, Obsidian Scales, and Expunge. Obsidian Scales is going to be our main defensive. Landslide is going to be a root, and Expunge does removing all toxins from us. We're going to be able to grab Natural Convergence to make Disintegrate channels 20% faster. Permeating Chill, which is going to give us a 50% movement speed debuff on players with Disintegrate. Verdant Embrace, which is going to give us a heal for ourselves or ally. Obsidian Scales has an additional charge, which is going to go great with our synergy with one of our PvP talents. Living Flame deals 6% more damage and healing, which is passive. Grabbing another passive to store 20% of effective healing up to 100,000. Your next damaging. Living Flame consumes all stored healing to increase its damage, so that's just something that happens over time. Cauterizing Flames, which is going to give us a heal and remove all bleeds, poison, and curses. Could be used on a ally as well. Grabbing Quell, which is going to be our silence. Ancient Flame, which is going to give us a quicker cast time on Living Flame when we cast Verdant Embrace or Emerald Blossom. Increase our magic damage done is increased by 4%. Tip the Scales. Tip the Scales is going to be used during our burst window, but it pretty much gives us a instant cast of full empowerment of our Fire Breath or Eternity Search. Then we're going to grab Sleepwalk, which is going to be our main CC to get any kind of any CC out really between our silence. We do have a stun, and then this is going to go with like on our incapacitates. Inherent Resistance, which is magic damage reduced by 8%. Our stamina is going to be increased by 8%. And Hover is going to last 4 seconds longer, which is going to help us be kiting because Evokers are very mobile, and that helps out with that. You got Blast Furnace, which is Fire Breath's damage is going to be over time, lasts 4 seconds longer. Renewing Blaze, which is a strong cooldown paired with this down here, and I'll explain that when we get there. But it's a 1.5-minute cooldown. It's going to give us a dot basically to heal for whatever damage we took. Emerald Blossom and Verdant Embrace is going to instantly heal us for 90,000. Rescue, which is a good use to position yourself differently, and also with this down here we're going to get a 30% of our max health as a shield. That does apply a shield to your teammate that you just moved as well. So Foci of Life is Renewing Blaze restores you more quickly, causing damage you take to be healed back over 4 seconds. So as long as they're damaging you within this 8-second window, within that 4-second period, it's going to continuously heal you, so it's a shorter cooldown. This is great for like solo shuffle or for even 2s, but I say grab Fire Within if you're going into 3s, because it just reduces the cooldown of Renewing Blaze. It is on a 1.5-minute cooldown, which is fairly short in my opinion already, so I just like having that extra heal, especially when it comes into burst windows. Grab an Unravel. So you can, instead of Unravel, you could take Oppressing Roar. I choose Unravel because there are a lot of bubbles in this game. A lot of people just have bubbles in general, and this hits pretty hard. It will glow for when a bubble is applied to whatever target you are going against, and it hits pretty hard, and it's 9-second cooldown. So I take that over Oppressing Roar, which is a 2-minute cooldown, and it gives you basically a CC buff for 50% on like any stuns, anything basically. But I choose this over that just because I can use this much more frequently. And honestly, I always forget to use this to pair it up with another CC because like I said, we're kind of CC starved. We have Sleepwalk, we have Deep Breath, and a Silence. That's pretty much about it. I mean, you do got your little Tail Swipe and Wing Buffet, but you're better off, in my opinion, taking Unravel for PvP situations. Leaping Flames, which is Fire Breath, is going to cause your next Living Flame to strike one additional target. We're just going to help out with our burst. There is a lot of synergy with this. Tear of the Skies, Deep Breath stuns enemies as well. So this converts your Deep Breath into a stun. We're going to gain an additional charge for Hover. This Time Spiral is a 2-minute cooldown, is going to basically allow you and all your teammates within whatever yards to go ahead and grab an extra charge of your mobility move. For us, it's going to be Hover. Alright, that is our left side. There really aren't too many different options that you can go with this that are better than this right here that we have set up. But like I said, you could take Oppressing Roar over Unravel. There are leeches, like 4% leech right here. and where is it? Essence regenerates 5% faster. Those are the only ones that I really would say to try and get, or maybe even increases your hover by 70%. Those are really good, but as far as what we have talented here, you're just gonna have better defensives and CC. All right, looking at the actual Devastation build itself, you got to take Pyre. Sadly, that's AOE. You're not going to be really using this at all, even if you have 3 targets built up and everything. That's not going to be your move. Our strength is single target, slightly like AOE, which I'll explain when we get there. We got Ruby Essence Burst. Your Living Flame has a 20% chance to cause your Essence Burst make your next disintegrate, or Pyre costs no Essence. So Essence Burst is basically a free proc. That's all Essence Burst is. You're going to read that a lot throughout this tree. We got Azur's Essence Burst. Azure Strike makes 50% chance to cause an Essence Burst, and so forth. Eternity Surge, which is going to be our main blue spell, empowerment spell. It does a lot of damage, especially when it comes to single target. You can use it up to the 4 charge to do AoE, but it's always better to do level 1 every single time with your Fire Breath and your Eternity Surge. We're going to grab Destin Energy for Pyre's Essence cost 1 reduced, but like I said, you're not going to be casting this. We're only grabbing this so we can get an increased maximum Essence to 6. And then over here, we're getting Living Flame deals 25% increased damage to healing, but its cast time is increased by 0.3, which makes it like a 2. At the moment for me, it's 2.1 second cast. When you're fully geared, it's going to probably come down to a 1.9, 1.8 second. You could go into this passive here, but for PvP purposes, this is going to be a lot stronger because you do get a lot of instant cast procs for Living Flame. We are grabbing Dragon Rage, which is going to be our main burst move. Basically puts us into a fantastic single target like response. But it's going to hit him with a bunch of pyres. It is an AoE move, but it benefits our mastery to 100%. That's the biggest benefit that it provides for us. Arcane Intensity is Disintegrate deals 16% more damage. Disintegrate is going to be our main move that we cast all the time. Basically, we're going to have a lot of those procs and a lot of those essences coming through to cast Disintegrate. Essence Burst stacks 2 times. Eternity Surge and Shattering Star hit at twice as many targets. So Shattering Star down here is going to be hitting 2 targets. Eternity Surge, if you max it out, you're going to be hitting 12 targets. But like I said, you're always going to want to do level 1 spells at all times, and I'll explain why. So we have Eye in the Infinity. Eternity Surge deals 15% increased damage. You can grab this to reduce it by 3 seconds, but honestly, with how hard Eternity Surge hits, you're going to want that extra damage on top of it. Shattering Star, like I said, Shattering Star is going to give us a damage increase buff of 20% for 4 seconds. And that's where what I normally do is combine Shattering Star with my Deep Breath. Because it is only a 4-second window, depending in your burst window, I'd rather waste a global on a Disintegrate proc versus a Shattering Star, just for a little bit extra damage on my Deep Breath. And then you have Shattering Star grants Essence Burst. So whenever you Deep Breath and then you Shatter Star Deep Breath, you're going to come out of that Deep Breath and be able to instantly disintegrate. Or you can make it last for 2 seconds longer, which is referring to the damage buff that you get. We are grabbing Animosity. Casting an empowerment spell extends the duration of Dragon Rage by 5 seconds, up to a maximum of 20 seconds. I'll explain how that works. Basically, we're getting an extension of this through our empowerment spells, as long as we cast those. There is a way to cast them in twice within 1 window to extend. I forget how long it is, but I think it's about 36 seconds. And this is on a 2-minute cooldown, so it's like you're without it for only a minute and a half. Fire Breath deals 30% more damage, so that's phenomenal. Catalyze, grabbing Wild Chain and Disintegrate. Your Fire Breath on the target deals 100% more damage. Fire Breath damage has 16% chance to cause your next Living Flame to be instant cast, stacking 2 times. So with this, making that Fire Breath tick much more quickly, you're going to be able to grab Burnout a little bit quicker as well. Grabbing during Deep Breath and Dragon Rage benefit maximum benefit of Mastery, regardless of the target's health. So this is why our burst hits so hard, is because our Mastery Giant Killer will just ignore it. It'll just hit as hard as possible at all times. Spellweaver's Dominance, your damage critical strikes deal 230% damage instead of usual 200%. So it's a huge buff for crit. Our Essence Burst has 20% chance to not be consumed, which is kind of OP sometimes when you're spamming Disintegrates. Disintegrate has 15% chance each time it deals damage to launch an Eternity Surge level 1 at 50% power. So that just hits extremely hard sometimes whenever you're disintegrating and you just see that Eternity Surge launch out. It's crazy. Casting and Power spells increase your Essence regeneration rate by 100%. Casting and Power spells increase the damage of your next 2 spells of the same color by 20% within 10 seconds. So this is going to be really important for our burst on the order that we cast our spells in for a specific reason, and I'll explain that when we get to our rotation. Essence Burst is going to increase the damage of affected spells by 15%. So that's, like I said, those Disintegrates, they're just getting a DPS buff and buff and buff every time you get it. And our Disintegrate is going to reduce the cooldown of our empowerment spells by 0.5 seconds each time it deals damage. So this is going to work well with our burst because that's how we're going to, as long as we disintegrate enough, you'll be able to cast your Eternity Surge and Fire Breath at least twice within one burst window. We are taking Scale Commander for our heroic talents. So we're grabbing Mass Disintegrate. Basically, after we do an empowerment spell, we're going to be able to do damage to everybody if there's 3 targets. But if there is less than 3 targets, which if you're in solo shuffle or 2s or something like that, you're probably going to run into that frequently. It's going to increase its damage by 15% per each missing target. Our black spells are going to deal 20% increased damage, so that's going to help out our Deep Breath specifically. Mass Disintegrate marks your primary target for destruction for the next 6 seconds. You and your allies have a chance to trigger a bombardment when attacking marked targets, dealing X amount of damage. So that's really important because it's you and your allies. Entering combat grants a charge of your burnout, causing your next living flame to be instant cast. This is going to give us great synergy with what we had talented on the left hand side. For each second you are in combat, Azure Strike, Living Flame, and Disintegrate is going to deal 1% damage up to 15% damage. So that's just going to tick up as we are fighting. Bombardments reduce the cooldown of Deep Breath by 1 second. For each target struck up to 3 seconds. So this is going to give us our cooldown reduction. Deep Breath causes enemies to take 20% increased damage from bombardment and essence abilities. This is extremely important, especially because, like I said, we're going to be getting that Shattering Star, Deep Breath into a Disintegrate. It's going to hit pretty hard. So you do have 3 options down here, and I'm going to go over which ones I took and why. So Obsidian Skills is going to reduce our damage taken by an additional 10%, or knocking enemies up or backwards, reduce the damage done by 15% for 8 seconds. So there was an update recently that increased the damage to Wing Buff and Tail Swipe to, I think it's 2 minutes now for Evokers. For everybody else, I think it's 3 minutes. So I don't think that's that big of a deal. I get my hover up, or my Obsidian Scales up a lot quicker, and it's an additional 10% for what they already give, which it's already a 40% damage reduction, which is going to increase it to 50. And then we'll be taking Diverted Power, which is on bombardments, have a chance to generate an Essence Burst. So that's just a benefit really over the essence abilities extend bombardments by 1 second. I would much rather have an Essence Burst to get off of that Disintegrate. And over here we have, while hovering, damage taken from AoE attacks is reduced by 10%, or Deep Breath resets the cooldown of hover. I'm actually going to be taking Slipstream over the AoE 10% because it's not really worth it. Not many people use AoE damage in PvP, but if I need a hover, I know I can at least Deep Breath, which is going to come off cooldown 1.5 minutes, and I'll be able to get hover cooldown as well. And then we got another passive for Deep Breath, can now be steered in your direction. In addition, Deep Breath burns all targets for 400k volcanic damage over 12 seconds. So if they're sitting in Deep Breath, they're going to be taking damage. Obviously, they get stunned for 3 seconds, so they will take some damage over on it anyways. But that steering ability is really what's nice, because you used to not be able to steer it. Given that that ability, we can pretty much stun so many people with it. Next up, so for our stat priorities, we do want to be focusing on intellect, of course, versatility, mastery, haste, then crit. Versatility, like in all my other guides, if you've seen it, versatility is going to give us an increase of damage and healing to ourselves, and that we do on players, and decrease the damage taken by other players. Then our mastery is going to be increase the damage of our spells by up to 22% based on the target's health of the target. This is extremely important because our burst from the get-go is going to be extremely strong because, of course, the more the health they have, the stronger your mastery is, which is why since we're buffed, we get the Tyranny. No matter what their health is, we're going to do our max mastery anyways. But as we don't have our buff, that's going to help out a lot. So we want to get that as high as possible. Haste is going to reduce our global cooldown and basically everything of how fast everything ticks. So we definitely want as much haste as possible. And then critical strike, obviously, is going to be more damage when we crit. Alright, so for our burst, our rotation, what we're actually looking at, our sustain is going to be pretty fairly simple in a nutshell, right? Hit your disintegrate procs, use disintegrate when you have essences, and then use your living flame whenever you can proc it. And then Azure Strike is only if like you're on the move. You really should be clicking Azure Strike unless you're in your burst window. So for example, our burst is going to look like Dragon Rage, Tip the Scales. Tip the Scales is going to give us that instant empowerment. So we're going to then hit Fire Breath, and then we're going to hit Eternity Surge. So there was a move that allowed us to buff our... Where is it? So casting an empowerment spell increases the damage of your next 2 spells of the same color by 20% within 10 seconds. So the reason why we always hit Fire Breath first is because it's a red spell, and then we have Eternity Surge, which is a blue spell, and then we're going to instantly have Essence Bursts as well, which is going to give us our Disintegrate. So we're going to want to Disintegrate because it's a blue spell, and that's going to be our main DPS move anyways. So it's going to get a high amount of damage out with 2 Disintegrates in a row like that. And then it's going to be Azure Strike, Disintegrate, Azure Strike, Disintegrate. You're just going to want to constantly always cast Disintegrate when you have an Essence Burst. And you want to be generating as many Essence Bursts as much as possible. And then whenever your burst window is done, you're going to be casting Shattering Star, Deep Breath, and more than likely Disintegrate right after that because it's going to be a lot of damage increase. And of course the Sun. Now this is going to be very situational during your burst. You can cast this during your burst and still be able to hit your Disintegrates off to get more Fire Breaths and more Eternity Surges to extend your Dragon Rage. So if you need to, obviously do it, but this is completely situational, but I try and hold that out once my burst is completely done, then we'll go from there. I do need to go over the PvP talents real quick, because playing defensively, it's going to be very important during our burst. So we're grabbing Obsidian Metal, and while Obsidian Scales is active, we are immune to interrupt, silence, and pushback effects. So you're normally going to be at the target like 9 times out of 10 because we are very squishy. We don't have the best defensives, but when we're playing defensively, as long as we have our cooldowns, we can survive through our burst basically. But we're going to want to pop Obsidian Scales the moment we pretty much start casting Disintegrates. They don't share the same global cooldown, so you can actually cast Disintegrate, pop Obsidian Scales, and Disintegrate again, all within about a half a second window. We were grabbing Unburden to make us immune to speed reduction effects. So we have 2 hovers. It's going to increase our speed anyways. This is going to allow us to kite a lot easier. And then Nullifying Shroud, which is going to basically protect us from any loss of character effects for 3 times. So for example, if there is a rogue and you have this cast, a rogue can sap you 3 times in a 3-second window and get rid of this instantly. So in that kind of play, it's terrible. That's why you want to try and get in combat as much as possible or quickly as possible when you're going up against a rogue, so he can't sap you and he's gonna have to waste the stun. So this will protect you from stuns, fears, pretty much anything that's gonna make you sit the game out, but that does not protect you from silences. So that's why Obsidian Metal is very important. So as far as our burst rotation, that's what it's gonna look like, and I will show you how it's going to play out. But like I said, we are going to be doing Dragon Rage, Tip the Scales, Fire Breath, Eternity Surge level 1, and we're going to Living Flame procs, and then Disintegrate. We're going to go through the Disintegrate, Living Flame again, Disintegrate. I got Living Flame procs, I'm going to use Living Flame again, Disintegrate. Now when I don't have a Living Flame proc or Essence Burst, during my burst window, I will Azure Strike because it's a single instant cast, and I'll Disintegrate. Azure Strike and and I missed my window. So I was so focused on explaining it. If you noticed, I had my empowerment spells back up for Fire Breath and Eternity Surge. I would have been able to extend my Dragon Rage by 4 seconds each for a total of 8 seconds, which just gives me that much more time during Dragon Rage. Now Dragon Rage is already at 18 seconds, and since I already cast this twice, that's 8 seconds right there, which gives me a total of 26 seconds at that point. And then when I cast it for a second time, we're at 34 seconds. So your burst window is up for a total of 34 seconds, as long as you remember to hit Fire Breath and Eternity Surge. So that's very important if you want to extend your burst. Sometimes it is kind of hard to do when you're either CC'd or in the mix-up of trying to CC others. You just got to be something to be aware and catch that before it comes off cooldown. So like I said, you're also going to be using Shattering Star, which is going to give them that little debuff, and you're going to be using Deep Breath. And like you can hit Deep Breath again to cancel your steering, so you don't do the full entire effect, so you can stop casting instantly and start Deep Breath or start disintegrating again, Living Flame procs. It's going to be very rare that you actually outside your burst window for you to start casting Living Flames. You're always going to want to either use Shattering Star first, Disintegrate, and then Living Flame if you don't have any of these available. Alright everyone, that is how we are going to be playing Devastation Evoker in PvP for arenas or even BGs. This works perfectly for all those kind of scenarios. If you enjoyed this guide, it would mean a lot to me if you go ahead and subscribe, like, or comment down on the video. What kind of class or spec would you guys like to see next?